Good morning, everyone. I hope that everyone's doing good today, and thank you very much for joining our webinar. This is the second in our Create, Formulate, Translate series. In the first webinar in this series, we took a look at 4 of the 5 key initial steps that marketing teams can take to launch a successful translation project. In today's session, we're going to be looking in depth at the 5th and arguably the most complex step in this process. This is establishing an effective process for local market reviews. By the end of this webinar, we hope that you'll have all the know-how to establish a streamlined and efficient market review process. Before we get into the topic of the webinar itself, I would just like to briefly introduce myself and Comtech as a company. So my name is Elliot, and I'm a senior account manager at Comtech. I've worked in the translation industry for 7 years now, and I currently work with many global clients to create great translation processes that suit their needs. I'm going to be your presenter for today, and I'm also joined by my colleague James, our head of operations. James is going to be fielding all of your questions, and it's also up to him to keep all of the technology running smoothly today. James also presented the first webinar in this series, so some of you may have joined that as well. In terms of Comtech as a business, we are an award-winning translation company based in Leamington Spa in the UK. For the past 40 years, we've supported our clients with producing effective marketing communications in many different languages. So, before we look at the detail of mastering market reviews, it would be really great to learn a bit more about your experience of handling market reviews. What we're going to do is send out a quick poll for the first question that you can see on screen. If you could select the option that best applies to you, that would be perfect. And if you do select other, then it'd be great if you could share any further details in the chat itself. That should be coming onto your screen shortly. For the second question, please share your thoughts via the chat function. If at any stage you do want to share any questions or observations about this webinar, then please do so via the chat. I'm also going to leave some time at the end for a quick Q&A, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have. So I'll just give you a minute now to answer any questions. Okay, great. So I can see that a couple of you have said that you're liaising directly with your local market reviewers. So I would say that the content of this webinar is going to be right up your street. Thank you very much for that. Just give a little bit longer for everyone to answer. Right, perfect. Thank you all very much for taking part in that. And I'm sure that you'll get plenty of great information as this webinar goes on. So thank you once again, and let's move on with the main content of the webinar itself. So thanks again for sharing your thoughts. And now that we've looked at your experiences of market reviews, we can look at the process in more detail. So how exactly do we define a market review? A market review is a term that we use here at Comtech to describe the process of our client's native speaking colleague reviewing our translation ahead of finalizing the content. For example, if our client is a UK-based marketing manager, their French marketing manager may complete a market review of our French translations before they're finalized and launched. The aim of a market review is for small tweaks to be made for the translation by the reviewer. These changes should focus on introducing company-specific elements, for example, relating to the terminology or the style. That way, The final translations will be fully aligned with your company's brand and style preferences. We do understand that our clients and their teams have plenty to be getting on with away from reviewing translations. We therefore make this process quick and easy for them, and we'll look how to do this later on. Next, we're going to have a look at what the role of a market reviewer is. Ultimately, we involve market reviewers so that their expertise can be included in the translation process and therefore result in an excellent final translation. The market review is a tricky process to master, but one that if you get right adds so much value to the translated content that you're launching. The linguists that we use are translation experts. Market reviewers enter the process to provide their company-specific knowledge. The market reviewer should review all translations that are destined for their target market so that they can share their expert local insights and preferences with your translation partner. Your market reviewer should be a trusted individual who is ideally based in the local market. They should have a detailed understanding of your brand and style, and it's also preferable that they have experience of reviewing translated content. Ideally, you want the same individual to be completing all of the reviews. This way, your translation partner can get to know their specific preferences. In the long run, this will reduce the time that they need to spend completing the market reviews. An effective market review should not take up much time for the market reviewers. It should instead be an opportunity for them to share their expertise, but in a highly targeted and efficient way. This way, the translations will be ready to launch in their markets. So as I've mentioned, market reviews are a process that, when done right, adds so much value to your translations. It is important first off to note that although these reviewers are based in market, they likely will not be professional linguists and they may not be fully fluent in English. They're also going to have their own day jobs to do, so they will have lots of pressing deadlines to meet and other tasks to complete. The market review process itself gets much more simple and effective over time. This is because the reviewers get used to their role and the review process itself. To make sure the review process is getting off to the best possible start, we've developed a couple of short checklists. The first, which we can see now, outlines what you as the client can do to get the reviewers on board. The second, which is on the next slide, outlines how your translation partner can add further value to this process. So first of all, let's take a look at some of the ways that you as the client can help. Select local market champions. Having a different reviewer for every single translation will lead to consistency issues across your content. You should nominate one fixed reviewer for all translations within each of your local marketing teams and make these reviews a core part of their role. It's important that you liaise directly with the reviewer to define their role and your expectations. By expectations, I mean what kind of things they should be changing and feeding back on, how long they should be spending, and the timescales that they have to complete their reviews. It's also really useful to encourage collaboration with the translation partner and their linguists. This way, the reviewers can understand who is completing the work that they're reviewing. We would recommend that kickoff calls are held with the reviewers and your translation partner present. Also, at the end of a project, we recommend feedback calls with the linguists themselves present. It's also really important to make your reviewers feel appreciated and to highlight how valuable the feedback they are providing is. This way, you'll get the reviewers to buy into the process and their involvement. Finally, make sure you confirm the process and service level that has been carried out by your translation partner. This helps to manage expectations. If you've requested a more creative translation from your translation partner, then you should let the reviewers know. The level of creativity and adaptation present in the output produced by the linguists will be different based on the service completed. If you have any questions about the service levels that have been undertaken on your translations, your translation partner will be able to answer this for you. Our second checklist, which you can see now, looks at the steps that your translation partner could carry out to add value to the market review process. Your translation partner could work with you to establish clear review guidelines for your reviewers. This will help them conduct their reviews in the most efficient manner. Ideally, reviewers should focus on incorporating company-preferred terminology and to make tweaks to the style to make it sound like company speak. What the reviewers should not do is make many preferential changes to non-crucial terms and phrases. Doing this can make the review stage much longer than it needs to be. When you're translating for a new market or a high-profile campaign, we highly recommend carrying out a two-stage review process. Your translation partner should provide an initial sample translation in each language for review by the markets. This would generally be accompanied by a linguistic commentary or a mini glossary to clarify their suggested approach. This is a great opportunity for the markets to share their feedback and confirm that the linguists are on the right track. Any feedback that is suggested during this sample can then be implemented on the remaining translation work. Once that's done, the full translation is then carried out and a final review of the remaining translation work undertaken. You should also ask your translation partner if they have any useful technology platforms to facilitate the review process. Logins, user guides, and demos should also be provided to help train the reviewers in using these tools. A lot of our clients will liaise directly with their reviewers. However, and if you're strapped for time, why not ask your translation partner to share their work directly with the review teams? They could also then liaise with them directly regarding their feedback and to finalize the translations. The translation partner would generally charge a small PM fee on top of translation costs to cover their time spent doing this, but the benefits will hugely outweigh the extra costs. By handing the full liaison over to your translation partner, you can focus on your core tasks. It will also encourage collaboration between the reviewers and the linguists. Finally, after the markets have reviewed the translations, it's important to share these reviewed translations with your translation partner. The translation partner will firstly review the changes made by the market reviewers. Once that's done, they will update their translation memory with the approved content ahead of future projects. There may be the introduction of spelling, grammar, or linguistic inconsistencies by the markets, as they are not necessarily trained linguists or copywriters themselves. It is therefore important that the linguist also carry out a full linguistic check of the translations to finalize them. Once that's done, your translation partner can provide you with the final translations ready to launch. I briefly mentioned technology platforms that can aid the market review process. Over the next two slides, we'll take a quick look at some of the tools that we provide access to here at Comtech. The screen that you can currently see is an example from the translation software that we use in-house, MemoQ. As you can see, the source text is on the left and is divided up into segments, which are separate sections of the original text. These segments can be single items, sentences, or paragraphs, and it all depends on the format of the original file itself. To the right, translators enter their translations alongside each element of the source text, and the platform functions in a very similar way to other word processing softwares. At the bottom of the screenshot, reviewers can view a preview of the translated content in situ. This works for many file types and can be used to evaluate text in the context of the actual file. And, to the far right, results from the translation memory are displayed. These are all the previous translations stored in the memory, which match the new source text to some degree. In this window, you will also see matches from the glossary of key terms. Some of the main benefits of market reviewers working within this software are: first, they have access to the key resources, such as translation memories and glossaries, which will ensure consistency with previous translations. All changes are made direct to a server and saved live, which removes the risk of losing work in case of a sudden loss of connection. The platform itself is fully secure and based on Comtech's own server. All reviewers are given unique credentials that are also maintained in-house by Comtech. As the changes are fed directly into the software, version control is made simple. There is no need to save multiple reviewed versions on your servers, as all of the different versions are stored within the translation software. And finally, being able to review the translated text directly against the source text makes the review process quicker and easier for reviewers. This is compared with the alternative of having the translated and original documents open separately on their screen. Here at Comtech, we could also provide bilingual Word document exports for market review. Ultimately, the review process can be tailored to suit your and your team's needs. Translation software such as MemoQ is very useful for completing a linguistic review of the content. Your translation partner should also offer additional solutions for the review of multimedia content. Examples include subtitled videos and InDesign or Illustrator files, as well as for website translations. A useful tool that we use is PageProof. This is a secure, web-based review platform that we use for multimedia content reviews. As you can see from the example screenshots, reviewers can view their translated content in situ. For example, if we translate a PDF, we will upload the translated version of this to the platform so that the translated text can be seen in the artwork file itself. The reviewers can leave comments of any final changes they would like to make to the formatting and the layout. The changes are flagged directly against the relevant text, making it simple for your translation partner to make the amends. Updated versions incorporating these changes can then be uploaded for final sign-off. Again, this is a much more straightforward solution than sending many different reviewed versions around your team. Multiple reviewers can access the platform and flag their own comments. All of the changes are then uploaded in real time to PageProof. Having this extra stage of review also allows for reviewers to see translated content in situ, ensuring that they have fully signed off the translation from a linguistic and a visual perspective. You can then feel confident that everything is ready to be launched. To complement these technology platforms and the overall review process, your translation partner should also provide formal documentation that supports your reviewers. The screenshots that you can currently see are examples of key resources that we share with our clients' market reviewers. On the left, we have a preview of a short top tips document. This outlines the best practice for completing a review of our translations. On the right, you can see a feedback form that the reviewers can use to provide structured and detailed feedback. Providing feedback on a translation can be difficult without having any guidance. The form in the screenshot contains scoring options across the following key criteria. Accuracy. How well has the original meaning been conveyed? Terminology. Is the terminology that has been used accurate and in line with company preferences? Style and tone. How well does the style and tone reflect your brand and business in the target market? Fluency. Does the translation read fluently? There is also an option to score the overall impression and to provide any extra comments. This feedback form takes a similar structure to how we provide feedback to our linguists. This means that any feedback from the reviewers can be actioned and implemented swiftly. These key resources have been designed to make the process quicker and easier for reviewers. The aim should be that, in the long run, they spend less time reviewing translations. This frees their time to get on with their core tasks. So I've briefly touched on the advantages of having your translation partner liaise directly with market reviewers. The most obvious way for them to liaise directly, and to save you time, is for them to manage a review of translations themselves. This would involve them sending the files out for review and also receiving the feedback directly. However, there is loads more that could be done beyond this. Here are some more key ways in which your translation partner can open up a great channel of communication with your market reviewers. Kick-off briefing calls should be held. This allows your market reviewers to make your translation partner and their linguists aware of their preferences ahead of them starting work. Reviewers can even provide a briefing in their native language to the linguists if that's easier. Your translation partner should provide training in the form of demos and guidelines for any technology platforms that the reviewers will be using. To save you time and hassle, Your translation partner can liaise directly with your market reviewers to send them content for review and to obtain their feedback. This will get the reviewers and the linguists working together as a team. All feedback should be comprehensively reviewed by your translation partner and captured within key resources, such as translation memories. Your translation partner can share any specific comments with the reviewers to aid future reviews. An example of this would be if any grammatical or linguistic inconsistencies were introduced by the market reviewer. And for initial or large projects, or even on a regular ongoing basis, feedback calls can be held with your translation partner. Their linguists and your reviewers should also join, so that direct feedback can be shared and discussed between all parties. The level to which your translation partner liaises with your reviewers is, of course, ultimately up to you. However, keep in mind that there is a lot of different ways that they can build a partnership with not just you, but also your reviewers. That way, everyone buys into the process and will deliver more effective work. And finally, let's take a look at the benefits of creating a streamlined market review process. Here are some of the key benefits that you and your team will achieve. You'll be able to produce and sign off on your multilingual comms much quicker. This means that your content can be launched faster, and less time and money is spent rolling this content out. You will see increased buy-in and support from your local market teams. This is because they will play an important role in the content production cycle. Your reviewers will also provide great feedback to your translation partner when they buy into the process. You can be confident that your translated content is high quality and accurately reflects your brand image. Your local market colleagues will sign off as part of your standard process, and you won't need to worry about them flagging changes after the content has been launched. You will also see better customer engagement and an improved global reputation. This is because your translations are produced in a consistent manner and with the input of your local market teams. And finally, with your content being truly engaging for your customers, you will see an increase in sales and the growth of your brand. And as a result of this, everyone wins. So that concludes the main content of today's webinar. We do now have some time for some questions. So if anybody has any questions or feedback, please do pop those into the chat. I'd be particularly interested in hearing about how people are feeling now about the market review process, or of course, if you have any questions about the items that I've discussed. So please do feel free to shoot anything across in the chat and I'll be able to answer that. I can, as a starting point, take a look at a question that one of our clients sent us, and they sent that ahead of this webinar. What they asked was, what would you typically discuss in a kickoff call? So what we aim to do is to keep kickoff calls structured so that everyone can gain maximum value from the call and so that it doesn't overrun for a needless amount of time. The main points that we would look to discuss would be as follows. So we would review brand guidelines. We would take a look at any specific local market differences in relation to these. So for example, if for the French market, the way that the brand is expressed differs slightly to the core English brand guidelines. We would review the brand and reviewers' style preferences. We would also look to discuss existing translated content. And this is mainly looking at whether it should be adhered to or not. We understand that sometimes our clients may have had issues with previous translations, in which case our reviewers should, of course, not be adhering to these. However, at the same time, if the client wants us to keep consistent with translations that have been completed in past, that's an incredibly important piece of information to know. We would also look to provide a brief overview of how to conduct a market review. And there would, of course, be time for any specific questions. Ultimately, the process that these calls follow can be flexible to suit the needs of a specific client and reviewer. So those are some core points that we would look at, but that doesn't mean that that is comprehensive. By the looks of things, there aren't any other questions, so I shan't keep you all any longer than you need to be here for. Before we go, thank you all so much for your time today. and for everyone's contributions via the poll. I hope that you found the webinar useful, and please do get in touch directly with us if you need any further advice. Just ahead of us finishing, I just want to share a couple of really useful guides that we've published. These are available at our website and are free to download. The first, which is briefly shown on screen here, is about how to deliver effective multilingual marketing campaigns, and that expands on all of the top tips that we've shared in this series of webinars. You also have a second guide, which is about website translation and localization, and the 6 key steps that you can take to effectively translate and localize your website. We'll also be in touch over the next few weeks with a link to a recording of this webinar that you can keep on file or that you can share with any of your colleagues. So thank you all very much. And we look forward to seeing you develop an excellent translation process, which includes market reviews and reaping the rewards. I hope that you all have a good day, and thanks again for joining.